Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast, Episode 4. Tonight, our guest is Randy Rusk from Do It Best Corp. Randy, thanks for being here tonight.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, Randy, you and I have known each other for about 15 years now. You were in a different capacity when we met at Do It Best. You were in HR. So we're going to talk a little bit about your career path, how
That's an interesting one. Yes.
Yeah, the winding road from the world of
long and
winding road from video production work to HR to marketing. And we'll talk about all that. But I wanted to kick it off with something that's really timely. You just completed a very different kind of Do It Best market. Can you tell the listeners what is the Do It Best market and why was this year's event so different? I suspect it had something to do with a little thing called COVID-19.
Yes. So twice a year, we have what we call our spring and fall markets. It's an opportunity for thousands of independent hardware stores, home centers, and lumber yards who are aligned with Do It Best, a member-owned co-op. And they're in stores representing businesses all across the United States, coast to coast, border to border, and in more than 50 other countries. And so twice a year we have buying markets, but it's not just a buying market. It's an opportunity for members to connect with vendors, with Do It Best staff, to learn about programs, services, new products, really to make their businesses better, to help them grow, and ultimately achieve their dreams as business owners serving their communities. And so we have, for more than 40 years, gotten together twice a year in the spring and the fall in Indianapolis. And this year we had moved our spring market up. This was way before COVID had hit, but we'd moved it up from May to February. And that was really to finally make a break of, it had been in May for many years, but graduations and school things and weddings, and there was just so many things that was
busy time of year.
Yes. Yeah. And so we're like, let's go into February. And so, I mean, we look like geniuses now because we were within our industry, we were the last ones to hold a market in 2020 because right after that, things went down the tube.
Well, I bet the city of Indianapolis was very happy that you were able to
yes, they were then. Maybe less so as we started to face it, as we started to look into the spring, and then as we were looking ahead to our fall market, where it was just, hey, this isn't going to work. In an environment where it's about people connecting and lots of handshaking and hugs and business done over meals and a lot of things that really require in-person engagement. And doing that in the Indiana Convention Center and Indy, that was just not in the cards. And so we quickly regrouped, made the decision to go virtual, as our entire industry, and well, really anybody who's had a convention. In fact, I just saw that the Consumer Electronics show in Vegas, that's normally in January, for their 2021 show has already been canceled.
Yeah. So, and if they're doing it, about everybody else will probably follow suit.
Exactly. Yeah. So and that was the thing too. We started looking at the number of conventions inside and outside our industry that were already making that call. And boy, even if we could have pulled off the safety logistics to make that happen, you don't want to hold a party and not have anybody show up.
For sure.
And so, at the same time, this is also a critical time for our members to be able to plan accordingly for their businesses. So, for them to be able to make their purchases for spring, because our fall buying market is really focused on spring, which is the busiest time of the year. It's for our member stores, it's like Christmas for a lot of other retailers, because the spring is you're getting outside and you're working on your house and you're painting and you're gardening and you're mowing and all those things that generate the activity that around the products that our members have to sell. So the fall market's a big one, and we wanted to be able to create an exceptional experience for them that would allow for all the great buying, but also be able to connect in all the other ways that we didn't want to give up by not having a live event. And so we did our due diligence. We've got a whole team of people who they're putting on the markets as their primary responsibility in communications. The marketing division at Do It Best, our focus was on then telling that story. How do we get this out? How do we demonstrate that this is going to be something fun, enjoyable? I'm pleased to share that we had a really healthy turnout from our membership. More than 70% of our members engaged in the fall market, which was just last week, and really happy with the results of that and how we were able to connect with them. And I think everybody kind of got through this one and went, okay, that was good. That was great. There were some things that we've learned in a virtual world that we want to bring over into the live environment. But there were also, I heard from the members who I see every market, who I check in, their kids, they bring their kids with them. And, you see the kids getting older, coming into the business, passing the business on. Those are lifelong connections. And for someone like me who's been at the company for more than 25 years, that's a lot of life being lived. And boy, you miss that in the virtual world.
Oh, sure.
You don't get that. But there are a lot of other things, streamlining, especially when you're talking about product ordering and buying and being able to look at the best deals and be able to plan out your buying for the coming season. There's some value about the tie-in with the virtual, but we'll see what the spring brings.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like your timing was about as good as it could have been because you still got the value of doing a live event in February, and then you had the opportunity for everybody else to be a guinea pig and for your for your members to get used to this virtual world, because that's, now it's almost more commonplace that people are used to doing things differently.
Yes, we certainly did not need to introduce the concept of a virtual market. So we are, again, sometimes you're blessed with you can have great plans, but sometimes you're blessed with great timing.
Yeah, well, and it's a great event. I've had the opportunity to be involved as a presenter in the education portion of the market. I've loved that experience, and this year was very different. It was me
we
recording
had you
a segment.
as one of our Knowledge Central presenters in a virtual environment.
Recording a segment by myself in my den, but it worked out fine, so I appreciate being involved in that. Well, talking about changes, I want to hear a little bit about your career path. On this podcast, we really talk about three things. One is the professional's career path, how you got to the place where you are today. And that's really to help people understand that it is a very winding road. It's rare that someone starts their career in one place and stays in that place, for the entirety of it. Then we talk a little bit about the organization you work for. You've already shared some great things about Do It Best Corp. I want to hear a little bit more. And then we talked about some of the challenges, some of the exciting things you're working on, because everyone's going through this. And, there's something to be said about that empathy of hearing other people who are going through things and hearing things that are exciting people as maybe a little bit of inspiration. So as far as the career path goes, let's start at the beginning, whatever that means to you. And how did you start finding your feet as a professional and getting something like a career started?
So, as you were sharing with me ahead of time, kind of where we were going with this, it did give me some time to just kind of pause and think about that. It actually was a really great exercise. I'll be 53 in about a month and a half, and just kind of think about that point and where you're at in your life, and how did I get here? And it was
because as you get older, you forget how you got here.
I also have two daughters.
Yeah.
One is 20, one is 22.
Okay.
The 22-year-old just graduated from IU, missed her entire final semester of her senior year of college. She had gotten a Fulbright, was going to be going off to Mexico to teach English for a year. All of that is up in the air, of course, now.
Man.
But I was telling both of them, hey, just because what you had planned hasn't played out, sometimes you just have to take that step and see where it goes. And sometimes you may have a thought about where you're going to go, and then later you can look back at that. So what's fun about today is being able to kind of where I am right now at this point in time and go, how did I get here?
Yeah.
So how did I get here?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it really started, the very first thing was, and this is going to date me a little bit, I've already said I'm almost 53, but there used to be infomercials that would run late nights, and there was one that, and I don't remember what the whole thing was, but there was this highly energetic little English guy, and there was Mike. Mike was the host, somewhat befuddled host, wore this multicolored sweater. Do you remember these?
I don't, but it sounds like it was like the 90s maybe?
Late at night, yes.
Yeah.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
but they would play late at night and into the late 80s even too. But he was always trying to solve a problem, and there was this little guy who would be going, Mike, let me show you what you need to do, Mike. All right here, Mike. And it was just hawking products.
So they had a shtick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were hawking products,
Yeah.
but they did it in a way that there was excellent storytelling.
Yeah.
And it was features and benefits, and it's just weaving a story into all of that. And I remember distinctly going, this is what I want to do with my life.
What was it?
I didn't want to host. I
Yeah.
wanted to be like part of the process of putting that all together.
So what was it about that caught your interest?
Just that I found myself, maybe it was justifying blowing the time of sitting there watching it going, hey, if I'm watching this, maybe somebody
Yeah.
else will too.
Well, that's a good point for sure.
But I loved the sets and the storytelling and how they would set things up.
Mm-hmm.
And, one time it might be they were selling some kind of car polish that would fix scratches, but there would be a car in the studio and
Yeah.
there's a live audience and, all of that, which
Yeah.
I'm sure if I looked at it now, I'd be like, this is what I wanted to do. This is the course that I was charting. But
Yeah.
it was that. That
Yeah.
was the thing. Because, I'm wrapping up high school. This would have been late 80s because I graduated in 86 from Northrop. But, my parents are like, well, what do you, and they never really put a ton of pressure on me, but they were going, you don't have to have it all figured out when you go in your freshman year, but you should kind of have a sense of where you want
You
to
have
go.
some things figured out.
And
Yeah.
so, marketing, I want to be in marketing.
Yeah.
So, and those old infomercials were what really kind of
Interesting.
got me
Yeah.
thinking, this is what I want to do. So I head down to IU,
Yep.
Bloomington, and taken all the prereqs, which the marketing path at that time included, it was business marketing, which I didn't realize at the time. But so I had economics and accounting
Yeah.
and huge lecture halls and statistics.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I hate this.
Yeah.
This is marketing.
Yeah.
I
And-
hate
And
this.
how much of that do you use today?
None.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, it's still the one part of my job today that I have to continually get better at, but I like the least is
Yeah.
is the budget
Yeah.
finance.
Well, I think there's something about most
Numbers.
marketers, our brains aren't wired that way. And there's some people who are better at it than others, but I know that if our folks ask me to do an exercise with numbers, I immediately cringe because I'm just so creative and word oriented. And I really have a lot of respect for the people who are numbers
Yeah.
oriented because I'm not.
I've just this last year, I've really redoubled my efforts to really understand the income statement because even in communications, there is value and importance in being able to understand what those numbers mean relative to the success of the company, which at the end of the day, I am tasked with helping tell the story of Do It Best. So I need to understand the financial performance story as well. But
A lot easier to tell the story if you can speak the language.
Yes.
Yeah.
so I'm in all these classes and I'm drowning. I am hating this. I'm like, this is not Mike in the multicolored sweater, storytelling,
Yeah.
video production, audio production. This is not what I want to do. And I was midway through my sophomore year. So it was just through the first semester of my sophomore year. And I had been, in high school, I had been a top performing student, graduated at the top of my class, and I had tested out a lot of stuff. So I'm in these classes that I'm getting my butt kicked, basically. And,
Yeah.
and that alone was a humbling experience.
Sure.
To not have everything coming really easily, and then going, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I like. And I'm sitting in my the guidance counselor's office, and I'm feeling like a broken person. And who isn't, when you're in your late teens, early 20s,
Sure.
and you're in college, and everything is.
Up for grabs.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
distinctly, even sitting here now, I can remember sitting across from her and saying, this is not what, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what classes I should be taking. And I'm watching her at this point. She's cutting out pieces of clip art from another piece of paper and using a glue stick and making some little sheet about some event that she was going to be posting up to the bulletin board, and she's like, and I'm just like, oh, she's not even, this is pointless. And just at about the point that I was ready to just throw in the towel, another guidance counselor had walked by and heard our conversation, and she stepped in and she said, well, Randy, have you heard of the school telecommunications? I was like, no, what is that? I had not, which so today surprises me that because I thought I'd done really good research on IU at the time, and I was like, I don't know what the school. She said, it sounds to me like that's what you want to be in.
Yeah.
So then, it's like, then this book opens and it's like, oh, because there's all these, it's audio production and video production, and I'm looking at all this stuff going, man,
You wish you had known about it.
This is
before,
what, yes, well, I would have loved to have not taken, I ended up, though, it did allow me to get a business minor for all that was worth.
Well,
but so that's what really started me. And then I just, once I got locked in with that, then that just took off. I enjoyed all those classes. And this is where I was like, yes, that was the affirmation that I was headed down the right path.
Yeah. Those stories, those interventions that are transformational, it's amazing to me how almost everyone I talk to has that moment in their career when they're in school, when someone just taps them on the shoulder and points them in a different direction that is, a game changer for them in terms of their career and their life. So it's interesting.
I wouldn't mind zapping back in time just to thank that person. Because I don't know where I would be today had that moment. And then you start going, if I start thinking about all that too much, it starts to get pretty wild. But so I graduated from IU with a degree in telecommunications. Stayed over the summer, worked at the public television station there. Got to work with some really cool people who did all sorts of production work, and I went, this is what I like doing, set design and thinking through camera angles and directing and all that goes into producing some good storytelling. And then it was like, okay, I got to do something with my life. And I was not coming back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. That was, to me, again, I can look back at it now and realize who I was then, and the whole big wide world opened to me. But coming back to Fort Wayne was going to be seen as a failure.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had applied for jobs in Indy, in Cincinnati, in Chicago, and nothing. I didn't have a deep bench of experience, and so I made and I was. My now wife, almost 30 years married, but at the time,
congratulations,
dating. Thank you. Yep. But at the time, we were kind of going, well, what are we going to do?
Sure. Was she from Fort Wayne?
She was from Marion, but I met her at IU.
Got it. Okay.
But she was living in Fort Wayne because she was doing her student teaching and finishing up her stuff. So it was, hey, there's some things we got to figure out, like relationship wise, but work wise, and. I fortunately had a very generous aunt and uncle who let me come and live with them for a little while, so I wasn't moving back into my old bedroom and all that kind of stuff. But it was a nice little setup. But I also knew that, man, the time is coming. I got it, and I had set myself a period of time of like, my full-time job right now is to find a job in the industry.
Yes,
and if I don't have it by then, it was. I'm going to apply to McDonald's or I'm going to do something.
Yeah, sure.
Which, boy, it's one of those things, too, where I realize now how close I was to had something not happen. So, but I had applied at Wayne TV and ended up getting offered an opportunity to start part-time, working evenings and weekends. But, man, I remember when I got the phone call, I was at my parents' house, and I cried that I was getting a minimum wage job.
Well,
at
somebody
TV
took a chance on you.
station
I mean, that's
where I'm working nights and making no money.
Yeah.
I still had to work another part-time job to live.
Yeah, but it seemed like the greatest thing in the world at the time.
Yeah. And the first night I'm standing there during the evening newscast. Back then it was Joe Gregory and Ellen Akins, and I'm holding the camera and it's like, oh, when I pan over for the over-the-shoulder graphic, it's like, how many thousands of people?
Yeah.
That lasted about a week. That kind of, that kind of excitement. But then you just, then it's
Yeah,
work.
it's second nature at that point. Yeah.
But, those early days, and I worked part-time, then I got full-time. I still did a lot of freelance work, tried to build my network. At the time, Naval, North American Van Lines, had a in-house production studio because they were doing a lot of video production. So I did some freelance there. Was then also heard about some freelance opportunities at what was then HWI, Hardware Wholesalers, kind of sandwiched in between Fort Wayne and New Haven off of 930. And so I would go over there, and they paid really good money,
Yeah,
almost
sure.
twice what I was making at Wayne.
Yep.
And I don't want to knock Wayne at all. It's like one of those things, again, you look back at those moments of going, I couldn't be here had I not been there. And there were a lot of great life lessons learned, some good, some kind of, some were good in the character building, some were like, boy, if I ever have an opportunity, I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to do this or not do this.
That's right.
But in a mid market like Fort Wayne too, there are a lot of people in and out the doors.
Yep.
Both from the anchors and reporters, but also from the production side.
Sure.
People on their way up in their career and people kind of finishing their careers.
So how long were you at Wayne altogether?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
So from 91 to 94. But during that time, I was painting houses. I was working freelance at Naval and at HWI, and an opportunity came up to move into a full-time job at HWI. And, it's kind of, even then, it was a little bit like, well, I've got this good thing going here, and if I stay at Wayne, I could eventually become a director. But it was also at the height of your game there, you're working the evening newscasts.
Sure. It's a demanding job.
And you go kind of, how do you have a family? And
Hey,
people did it.
Were your
it.
kids
No
born
kids
yet
at that point.
Okay.
Nope.
You're looking ahead. You're saying, where do I want to be?
Right.
Yeah.
And, my wife worked a day job, and so it put a lot of pressure on us early in our marriage of just the weekends because I'd get home at 11:30, 11:45, and I'm still buzzing from the evening, and she's been in bed for an hour, and then she'd be up and gone before I'd get up, and so we would only see each other on the weekends. So that was also, again, people did it, people still do it, but I also was like, I don't think this is going to work for me long term. And so the opportunity at HWI came up, and it was working. They had an in-house video production studio. I'd never heard of them before. Like I said, I've lived in Fort Wayne all my life, but I was one of the many who were. What is
Historically,
HWI?
it was a very quiet company.
Yes.
That's changed.
Yes, it has, and I'm glad to say I'm part of.
For sure.
The change that's been made, but at the time it was, and the belief back then was that we have member stores in the area. We don't want to overshadow them, but it's also over the years that has hurt our ability to be effective in recruiting and retaining staff if people don't know we're there.
Correct.
Plus, we were back before the Maple Crest overpass was there. We were just stuck
Really
between
hidden.
the train tracks.
For sure.
So I started working there, and over a period of 7 years, I worked my way up to becoming the video services supervisor. And this is the reflective part, because I look back at that and think at the time I was known as the video guy. If I was walking around the building and I didn't have a camera over my shoulder, it was, hey, where's your camera?
Yeah.
Oh, you going to shoot a video of us? It just, that kind of stuff. You're like, yeah.
I heard that one 10 times today. Yeah.
But, back then we were also slinging a 3/4-inch deck over one shoulder and a big heavy tube camera on the other shoulder. Today it's...
So it was conspicuous.
I shoot video on my phone now that we use to distribute. So, but back then, you make a presence, and but it was a great experience. But I'd been doing that, like I'd say, actually, I did that from 94 to 2004. So about 10 years, all told. But I was reaching that point where the fun was starting to go out of it. I felt like everything I'd done, we'd moved from a tape-based system to a nonlinear digital editing system, and we were just at the point where VHS was starting to fade away and DVD was becoming the big thing. And I'd already kind of gone through one big technology shift, and I was just feeling like, man, everybody I know who spends their whole life in video, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of them are divorced, they're bald, they're stressed out. And I was like, man, I don't want to be one of
So
those.
you saw your future.
And I didn't want to be pigeonholed as the video guy.
Yeah,
Although,
sure.
And I'll get to this in just a minute, it's come back into my life. But
Yeah.
at the time, after 10 years of doing
Sure.
that, I was like, I really want to do something else. And I sat down and had a conversation with Nancy Harris, who is our benefits manager today. But I just said, man, I want to do something else. I love working here, but I don't know what I'm skilled at, good at, if I can do anything else, if there is anything else that my skill set could transfer over,
Sure.
because I'm the video
Yeah.
guy.
So you're open to possibilities at this
Yes,
point.
but I also didn't see that there were a lot
Sure.
open for me.
Yeah.
Even though, again, in hindsight, that was kind of short-sighted to me, and I've used that lesson to help educate others as well. But she said, well, we have an opening in human resources. Human resources? I don't hiring people? I mean, I know the company pretty well, and I know how we operate, but I don't know. I don't have I didn't go to school for that. I don't know anything. I don't know the first thing about HR. And she's like, that's okay. We can teach you.
Yeah.
And again, the benefit of hindsight, I can look at the time, there were a lot of skills that I had developed in video production and marketing in general. So when I did become a HR administrator, but the first thing I did was I revamped our company newsletter. And one of the things I take great pride in is I killed the recipe column and the crossword puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started putting in meaningful news relative
Instead of
and
filler,
mostly a lot of profiles. So I started telling stories.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So, so there was one thing where it's like, hey, this is applicable. Then I was started to get assigned projects that were event organized. So it was live events, helping draft some speeches, and work with the video team on some things. And so there were some things I could immediately contribute to and help improve. And then over time, I ended up getting my PHR certification and did that for 7 years and was really enjoying it. And I kind of thought, well, this is kind of interesting. You know, I started out and have a whole background in telecommunications and got me to that point. And now I'm going to, I guess for the rest of my career, I'm going to be an HR professional.
Well, and it's funny because my image of Randy Rusk is he's the guy who used to be the HR guy who's now the marketing guy.
Right.
I didn't know anything about the video production side. So that's one of the reasons I like
that's
having
what's
these
funny too
conversations.
is because when I knew I had reached a level of success in HR when I would tell people, well, I spent, I was 10 years in the video studio, and they're like, you did video?
Yeah, when they kind of forget where you came
haven't
from.
done this all this time?
Yeah.
No, I'm only 2-3 years in.
Yeah.
But so I was 7 years in. This was 2011. It was Labor Day weekend. I was up in Auburn looking at some really cool Ferraris when the VP of the marketing division at the time, Tim Miller, called my cell and said, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm looking at these cool Ferraris. She's like, well, what are you doing next week? And I said, well, I'm actually taking vacation. I plan on being off. It was Labor Day weekend. And he's like, would you be interested in coming in and talking with us about the communications manager position? And I was like, what? Why? Why would you think me? And he goes, because, I'm now in HR administrator mindset. He's like, well, your varied background really could be a good fit. You've worked, and when I was in HR, one of the other primary things I did that was truly HR driven was working with performance management with our executive team. So I got to work closely with all of our VPs on some rather sensitive things, and helping them with how to communicate that stuff. And so again, unknown at the time, but that became a really good bridge for, boy, there are some great ways that those skills I learned in HR and video production can now be brought with me. And so I had gone in that Tuesday, so Monday was Labor Day, but I went in that Tuesday on vacation and sat down with then President and CEO Bob Taylor. And the other thing too going on with this is there had been some pretty frequent turnover in
Sure,
that position.
sure.
And it had been mostly outside folks coming in,
Sure.
and for a variety of reasons.
Well, you
it
got to be a
just-
cultural fit
it
in addition to
didn't- it
being
didn't
skilled.
fit.
Yeah.
And it didn't fit for a variety of reasons. And so I'm looking at that too, going, man, I don't.
Yeah, am I going to be the next victim of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to continue on. I love working at this company. I
Yeah.
want to continue working here. And so Bob talked with me a little bit. It was very informal, and I just said, he said, do you have any questions for me? And mine was, what is your measure of success in this role? How will someone in this role know that they are successful? And I use it still. I tell everybody on our team today the same thing that Bob told me then was, when you're telling the do it best story, then you will be successful. And that's our litmus test for everything.
Yeah.
Now there's a ton of things you can throw in
Sure.
that bucket of what
Sure.
is the do it best story.
Sure.
And it continues to change
Yeah.
and evolve and grow.
Sure. Well, that's, if you don't mind, that's a perfect transition into. So before I jump to the transition, because I want to talk about the Do It Best story. What is this entity known as Do It Best, and how do you describe it to people? Before I do that, anything else career-wise? Any other milestones?
Well, I'm now the longest serving communications director in the company's history.
So how long have you been in that position?
This is, let's see, that was 9 years.
Okay. All right. Wow.
So-
wow. Time goes by really fast.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's weird to think about like 10 years and 7 years and 9 years, these big chunks of time. And
Yeah,
you
which used to
go,
be half your life.
I went when I started there. I
Yeah.
had no kids, and now I've got a 22-year-old and
Yeah.
a 20-year-old,
Wow.
and starting to contemplate what's gonna be next.
Yeah, sure. So really interesting career path, and it's landed you for a good chunk of your career at a company that's extremely well known in terms of its name and its prestige in this area.
I'd like to think so now.
Yeah, I think most people know that Do It Best Corp is a big company in Fort Wayne, but I think if you asked them, what's that place all about? Like a lot of companies,
Yeah.
most people on the street wouldn't know. So how do you describe it to people?
So, to your point, for many years, that even when I was recruiting in HR, and people would ask me, "Where do you work?" and I'd say, "Do It Best," and like, "Oh, do you like the?
Yeah.
Are you a
You
salesperson?
work in the garden section, or yeah.
Are you a cashier?
Yeah.
A store manager?
Yeah.
No, I do not work. Those are interesting jobs, but that's not my job.
Yeah, sure.
So Do It Best was founded in 1945 by Arnold Gerberding right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we're celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, kind of on the tail end of that now. But, 75 years ago, this diminutive man who was full of energy set out to talk to hardware store owners in Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio, and preach to them the benefits of forming a co-op. At the time, he wanted to call the company Royal Hardware Corp. But as the first board got together in June of 45, they voted him down, and Hardware Wholesalers, Inc., or HWI, became our name. And what's interesting to me, too, and this is one of those, like, all the ways that life connects, is that I had an opportunity when I was freelancing at HWI to work with Don Wolf. He had, by the time I joined the company, he had retired, but I got to work with him while I was freelancing. Of course, I worked with Mike McClelland, and then Bob Taylor, and now Dan Starr. The only person I never worked directly with was Arnold Gerberding.
That's
However,
interesting. Yeah.
my dad was a high school English teacher and would mow yards during the summer. He had a lawn mowing business, and I would work with him, and I got to mow his widow's yard. And I didn't know that until I had worked at HWI for a while. But I remember Mrs. Gerberding's yard in Imperial Gardens, and having this big pine tree in the backyard that we would all flip a coin to see who had to mow around that tree. So even though I never worked directly with Arnold, he had passed away in the 70s, but I did mow his widow's
Well, there you go.
yard. So I feel like
all comes
I'm
together.
somewhat connected to the whole history
Yeah,
of the company
sure.
in that regard. But so Arnold had this vision for this moderately sized regional co-op, but as he retired and Don Wolf took over, it really became apparent that to grow, to succeed, you had to grow. And growth took many shapes, but Don led a lot of that initial growth by expanding our borders, building warehouses outside of Fort Wayne. The first one was in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and then added in Dixon, Illinois, and Medina, Ohio, and started to extend our reach to go from being a regional co-op to a national co-op. Don is in some ways a mythical figure in Fort Wayne and certainly in Indiana. We certainly were sad at his passing just about a little over a year ago at 90 years. But even in his 90th year, he was still, his brain was firing. He had ideas all the time. He would, I'm probably going to get choked up here just thinking about it. Take on it. He would call me every year because he knew I was the communications director, and he would call me every year after the annual report came out, and he would tell me what a great job I did.
Oh, that's great.
And, it's just like one of those things where you go, last year was the first.
Oh, wow.
It was the first year I didn't get the call.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things where you didn't have to do it, but you probably didn't know how much you appreciated it either.
Yeah. And
wow, that's great.
It was just like, it was one of those things that it was kind of nice because, old Don Wolf called me and said we did a nice job. And then the year that I didn't get that call, that's when you kind of go,
that's when it makes the impact.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyway, but Don was a growth-minded individual, really set the company forward in its path. Of course, then Mike McClellan, Bob Taylor brought their own energy to that, and as has Dan Starr, in really challenging us to look for new ways to help our independent dealers grow. And that's really the core of what we do. Is we have thousands of independent hardware stores, home centers, lumber yards,
all over the world, correct?
E-commerce, e-tailers, and industrial commercial distributors, all part of this member-owned co-op.
Yep.
On our way to $4 billion in sales.
Yeah.
But the way co-op works is the net profit of the company at the end of the year is returned, distributed in the form of rebates, which then help those store owners fuel their additional growth by buying more businesses, expanding their current operations, invest in inventory. But it's their way to be able to compete and win against big box competition or Amazon or any other number of things. And this year, which was a complete reversal of fortune in a very good way, in that our independent dealers were deemed essential throughout the pandemic. So we've had a phenomenal year, and I say that with all due respect to the many businesses that did not have a good year or where they've struggled, but our industry was very robust this year.
Sure. Well, I mean, you have more people working outside in their yards because they can't do much else. You have sales of cleaning products. You have sales of all the stuff that is truly essential to people living. So.
In most markets, we had some markets where Michigan for a while had closed all new construction. So we had store owners there, lumber yards there that felt a bit of the pinch. And even in that success, there's still many challenges. The ability to source product, the supply chain right now is really, I mean, if you go into the grocery store,
there's still empty shelves.
We joke about the toilet paper, but man, you used to be able to get Cottonelle in the 4-pack, 8-pack, double roll, triple roll, 24 triple roll. And now here's one 8-pack of Cottonelle. That's it.
That's right.
That's all you got.
Feel lucky if that's there. Yeah.
So the same thing is in our industry. Is the manufacturers are focused on getting their core products and So we kind of that's what we do. Our job is to help find source product for these independent dealers, but also then to provide them the programs and services, store design, marketing, to help them compete and win in the marketplace.
So Randy, how do you describe the size of Do It Best Corp? Because that's the thing that's always impressive to me is that just the sheer massiveness of the company.
Yeah, so we have a total of about 1,800 employees nationwide. We've got our world headquarters in Fort Wayne off Nelson Road. We have about 425 folks there across 8 divisions. Interestingly, when you think about we're in wholesale distribution of home improvement products, of those 8 divisions in our world headquarters, the largest division by far is IT. It's not logistics. It's not
Yeah.
finance, marketing. It is a quarter of our staff are in IT because
Really?
it's about driving operational efficiency.
Huh. Interesting. Never would have guessed that.
Yeah, which again is I think especially as Do It Best has been linked in the news lately with other things going on. We're thought of as, because our building was built in 1947. It does have a row of bays, and we've got a huge back area that is used primarily for storage. I mean, after all, we've got 75 years of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has been just piled up, and there's air back there that Arnold Gerberding had been breathing. But so there's a misconception sometimes that we're this warehouse. We do because we have all this space. We have in the business that we do some broken loads. So there are trucks that come and go, but that's really there are 2 or 3 people who work doing that. The vast majority are professional positions who are run a international distribution company, along with then 8 regional warehouses across the United States, from Montgomery, New York, all the way out west to Woodburn, Oregon. We have a China office, and then we have member stores, as I said, from border to border and coast to coast in the U.S., as well as in more than 50 other countries, with a heavy concentration in Central and South America, the Caribbean.
Wow. So it's kind of like a tech company that just happens to
Yes.
do hardware and lumber stuff. Wow, that's great. So let's talk about some of the projects that you're working on right now, and you can pick a couple. The things that to you are most exciting, most challenging, most interesting, whatever is most compelling to you. Talk to us about what you're working on and why it's interesting to you.
So I'll go back to telling the Do It Best story.
Yeah.
And one of the most fun ways to tell the Do It Best story. Every industry has their own collection of industry magazines.
Yep.
And we have one of the things I'm really proud of that our team has been able to do over nearly the last decade is build a really positive, engaging, collaborative relationship with our trade press. It is not a combative, confrontive trade press. Their markets are to share information on business best practices with independent hardware stores, home centers, and lumberyards.
Yep.
And which is what we do. And so we've built a really good relationship with them. And the most fun I have is in finding cool things that our members do, and then pitching those stories to the trade magazines. And especially when you get one that you think, man, this is a really good story, and then it makes the cover.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, that it's a quadrant that I love to spend time in, but it's also one that, because of all the other things that I am responsible for, I'm not able to spend nearly as much time as I would like to in there. But then at the same time, that's really not for the things that are incumbent upon the communications director. Coming up with stories and pitching them.
Sure.
And, I'll give you an example of one that recently came across my desk. A store owner, their paint department, they had a big piece of cardboard, and they eventually moved to a piece of canvas for the full idea. But every time you mix paint, you get a paint smudge on your finger, and they'd wipe their finger on this piece of cardboard. And the store owner noticed after time that, hey, we're kind of almost building an impressionistic painting.
Interesting.
So she actually went out and got a piece of canvas on a board, and they started intentionally every quart, every gallon, every 5-gallon container of paint that they made, they dip their finger and take a smudge. And so this year, over thousands of cans of paint, they have created this really cool painting.
Oh, wow.
It actually looks like a rooster on coming out of, or a pheasant. I'm not quite sure, but it's really neat, and it all came from every gallon quart of paint that was mixed. And and then they're going to, so customers said, well, that's really neat, can I buy that? And they thought, well, maybe we should auction this off. Well, who would we auction it to? Well, let's ask our customers what charity we could donate the proceeds to. So that hasn't happened yet, but it's just like a cool thing like that, and you go, well, that's something so that's this store in this town,
Yeah.
but another store could do that maybe.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
wouldn't maybe
Yeah.
this magazine would be interested in
Yeah.
profiling them
Sure.
doing this thing. And
Yeah,
then
just a little
you
bit of
kind
inspiration for other people who have the same, challenge or opportunity,
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah.
And so, when you discover a story like that and then you talk to somebody and you get excited
Yeah.
because they're excited, and then they're excited because you're excited.
Yeah.
And then, then it gets in a magazine that they've been getting in their store for
Yeah.
15 years and they're suddenly in it.
Yep.
And they're thrilled.
Yeah.
And then one of the things we do now is we used to mat and frame it. Now we back print it on Lexan. And so we send them
Yeah.
the oversized blown up of their
Yeah.
profile, which then of course they put in the
Oh, sure.
front and center in their store. But that's for me the bar none. If I could do that
Yeah.
all day,
Well, it's tangible too. I
Yeah.
mean, you get to see the results of your work.
in
And
a
lot of,
relatively short period of time.
yeah, and a lot of what we do, especially in today's age, is kind of here and gone. And you do it, you work really hard, and then it's a blip on the radar screen. So it's kind of nice when something has a lasting impact like that.
Well, and there's so much technology affects so much of our
Yeah.
job now too, and we have built a whole Trello board up now that
Yep.
really helps us engage and interact with that, and we can track stories through. And
Yeah.
once it's published, you put the link and you put that in the
Yep.
archive, and so it's really built up a great resource and
Yeah.
a network for us too. But that's
Yeah.
the most fun thing I do.
Well, one of the things I remember, I worked with Do It Best for a period of time. I remember literally doing column inch measurements off of stuff clipped out of print publications to report back to Do It Best the value of what they were getting in earned
Right.
media. So if that makes me sound like a dinosaur, yeah, I'm a dinosaur. I remember
Yeah.
those days. But so it's changed quite a bit, but there's still a ton of value in that earned media in those stories. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Way more than paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the next thing I would say probably is, and I'll tip of the hat to Tim Miller, who was my VP at the time. So this is about 2014, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but in the world of social media, 2014 we were into it, but not into it.
That's right.
But Tim told me then that, hey, I want you to take over our social media. What should we be doing?
Yeah.
And we had a Facebook page, but it was being managed by another department. Which today I look at it and go, how did that ever make
Well,
sense?
for social media, that's half a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other area I like for the immediacy
Yeah.
is developing really good stories
Yep.
with photos to post on Facebook.
Yeah.
We use Twitter, LinkedIn, but to have to be able to again tell the Do It Best story through effective social media. And we know what kind of stories are going to hit and what people like, and
Yeah.
we know what days are the best days to post
Sure.
that kind of content. And we want to again be able to create an environment both to reinforce for our current members, hey, this is why you're part of this great company, but also for people who are going, well, who are you? What do you believe in? What are
Yeah.
you there to do?
Yeah, because
that
ultimately part of
social
your
media-
job is promoting the co-op to prospective members, right?
And back to our own members to
Yeah.
reinforce to them to provide that stickiness to
Yep.
them. Why this co-op and not another?
Sure. So one of the things that we like to do, anything else as far as big projects, exciting projects, challenging projects?
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, this year is it's kind of hard to avoid the halo effect of this
Yeah.
year because everything has been challenging,
sure.
and everything that we've had to do this year. I like to be very organized. I like to have my day scheduled out.
Yep.
And we've got some great tools to do all of that. But one of the things that I have learned later in my life now is that there are times where you just have to surrender to
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah.
And both with planning for a virtual market, but also planning in an environment where the majority of our staff were working remotely
Yep.
for 3 months, and business continuity plans and communicating COVID everything.
Yeah, sure.
Not just for our own staff, but for our members
Yeah.
who were trying to work through the world of loans and
Yeah.
what does essential business mean,
Sure.
and all of that stuff. There were weeks and weeks and weeks where I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It just is all a blur. We kept it all logged. I
Yeah.
can go back because we had the foresight at the time to go, we need to keep track of everything we're doing because this will be a tremendous case study later
Yeah.
to go back and look at everything that we did.
Sure.
And what's most interesting and what I'm really proud of is the close relationship that communications had with human resources and admin, to where there were things we were doing early in the pandemic in communicating to our staff, in whether it was in masks or social distancing or just self-monitoring, the things we were doing to keep our team safe, and communications played a big role in getting that message out. We were well ahead of the curve with what a lot of other companies' best practices became. We were doing weeks, if not a full month, before a lot of the country was there. So, and communications, our team was right in the heart of all of that.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Because, you have all this stuff coming in, you go, okay, well, we got to tell people.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
how do you describe something that nobody yet really fully knows how
Sure.
to describe? And I mean, today we say social distancing like it's nothing,
Yeah.
yet just a few months ago, if I had said
Yeah.
social distancing, you'd be like, what is that?
Yeah, well, and I think everyone's had this thought, but I was thinking the other day, I was like, what if someone Rip Van Winkled for 6 months and woke up today? They
Oh.
wouldn't understand what was
Yeah.
going on. Yeah,
What's with everybody wearing masks?
that's right.
And-
That's right. Why are there cardboard cutouts of people at baseball
right.
games? Yeah.
Why are there big plexiglass shields around everything?
Yeah, yeah. So the thing we like to do to wrap things up is to kind of recap the 3 questions I asked, but to do like a quick hit. So this is the
Okay.
speed round of the program.
Oh, you know me, I'm so brief in my responses.
You and I could go on for we both like to be chatty, but if you had to very briefly give a piece of advice to someone who was considering a career in marketing, just getting started in their career, and it doesn't even have to be marketing, what's some of the best career advice you've learned along the years?
Well, and we can reflect back to what we've just been talking about here, and that's everybody starts somewhere. Mm-hmm. Your first job doesn't have to be the perfect one. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of things I really liked about my first job in the industry. There were a lot of things that, you pay your dues.
Yep.
And so that kind of every position, good or bad, has things you can bring to the next role. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've always said at Do It Best, and this was when I was in HR, but I still kind of preach this today, is once you get familiar with our company, then you've earned your Do It Best degree. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know it at the time in making the move from video to HR, but I'd earned my Do It Best degree in those 10 years in video that could take me into other opportunities. And so I still preach that today, but it's kind of that everybody starts somewhere.
Yep.
And every opportunity you can you can learn, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That didn't work out.
Sure.
And that's what I tell my kids today is, hey, try something. If you don't like it, then do something else.
That's right.
Or take what you learned and apply it the next one forward.
Yeah, very, very little is terminal, yes.
Yes.
So second question, if you had to describe Do It Best Corp to someone and you had just a couple minutes, what would be the key thing you'd want them to take away?
I think the biggest one, this has been, I think what we've learned over this last year, especially as we're really looking to, if we're pushing growth for our members, if we're sincere in our commitment to help them grow, it's going to require us to grow too. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be able to attract and retain really good employees. And so that's the thing that I think we have learned a lot is we're a international wholesale co-op approaching $4 billion in sales in Fort Wayne's backyard, and we're full of professional positions in marketing and finance and logistics and human resources and project and product management and merchandising. And that's the thing I think that most people still, they're like, oh yeah, I saw your sign as I was going on the overpass. Yeah. And yeah, you guys have a big parking lot and you're in a big old building, which is all of that is true.
Sure.
But that building is full of some top-notch professional talent right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we just are looking to grow that even more and add to that. But having been in HR, I know that's also the biggest challenge because we're not in an easy to find spot. Yeah. We're kind of, even though it's more easily accessible, we're by some old railroad tracks, which back in 1947 made a whole lot of sense for Arnold
Oh, yeah.
Gerberding because that was a functioning warehouse, and we could roll train cars right in the side.
Yeah. I remember not so fondly going to the corporate office and getting stuck twice behind a train on the same trip.
Yes. Oh.
So it's great now because
Yes.
you don't have that issue. But
To summarize, it would be Do It Best is the kind of company with professional positions where somebody can come in, get their Do It Best degree, and have a rewarding, rich career. I'm 26 years in.
Yeah.
I've done 3 very distinctly different things in those 26 years that all had a thread of connectivity to all of it.
so is there anyone there who still knows you as the video guy?
There are a few,
Okay, all
but
right.
it's more in the nostalgic. Hey, remember back when you used to
be
do
the
video?
guy? Yeah, that's fun.
Well, now and this is, I didn't say this earlier, but as a connection point, now in my role as communications director, I oversee the video department.
Yeah, so you've come full circle. Yeah. So the last question, Randy, is it's obviously a challenging time for everyone in just about every field, and that's true for marketers as well. If you were commiserating with a peer, someone who was going through some challenging times or trying to figure out a problem, what's the best piece of advice you think you could give someone in the year 2020 about this marketing environment?
That if you wait till you have 100% of the information you need to make a decision, you're too late. And that's part of what I said when I surrendered myself a little bit, is that I like to go equipped with a lot of facts.
Yep.
And there have been a lot of times this year where we have made decisions when we've had 60, 70, 75% of the answer, but we moved forward.
Yeah.
Some of that was really exhilarating because we were able to get in and make some headway really quick without a bunch of meetings.
Yeah.
There were some times we fell on our faces.
Yeah.
But you didn't. The benefit was everybody was extending grace to each other because of the enormity of the, and I hate this word, but we say it a lot, unprecedented nature of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, there's a reason people keep saying it because it's true.
But, to be able to move more quickly, to go with not having everything. I mean, you still want to get as much as you can, but one of the things we've learned this year especially is if you wait until you think you have every part of it figured out, there are other people who've already moved on ahead of you.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of great metrics that you can rely on. And that's the other thing, too, is just trying a lot of things. And if they don't work, then try something else.
That's right.
But don't waste time commiserating about what didn't work. Look at what the data tells you. Look at what your YouTube views or your social media metrics tell you. And then adjust and go again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in that spirit, we could spend, if we tried to cover 100% of the topics we could cover, we would be here for hours more, and your wife would not like that. So, Randy,
she's got pulled pork cooking. So.
All right. Okay. Well, that's much better than me. So, well, I appreciate it. This has been great. You've got a great story. Love hearing your career story and love hearing about Do It Best.
This has been fun.
Well, thanks. It's due to you and your story. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Randy. Thanks for being here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with another guest on the Asher Marketing Podcast. Have a great week.